All right, we're gonna get this meeting started. It's January 9th, 2023, special workshop budget. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of the Republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You doing a roll call? Or is that? You are, there you are, let's see. Hi.
Mayor Longfellow.
Here.
Councilperson Miller.
Here.
Dean.
Here.
Schooling.
Here.
Goodweiler.
Here.
Sexton and Dennison.
Okay, I guess Adam's gonna have most of the floor. What's our expectation for tonight? We gonna make decisions? Are we gonna? Are you asking us for?
Preferably, yeah, if you run into an issue, you need to let me know today, so I can fix it. Or we can debate it.
Okay.
So hopefully we get through the nitty gritty. This section's gonna be choppier. With everything we've got going on. But the idea would be we get through the messy stuff, which is today. Some of the projects and health benefits, hotel, motel, that kind of stuff, which is smoother. That'll be next week. But if there are issues or contentions, we will have to have a third work session on the 24th. Can't go any later than that. Otherwise, we're running into public hearing deadlines. So this is the meeting to disagree.
When's the tax deadline?
It's like February 4th or so. So 17th, and I've got the timeline.
Yeah.
So we're not at it quite yet, but next week we'll have to start thinking.
Okay.
So
Okay, I guess you have the floor.
we will be quick on just general what's going on with other cities. But Mason City's lost 35 million in taxable valuation. Indianola's seen a 5% and 6% decrease due to the business tax credit program. Burlington, same issue. Charles City, for the second year in a row, is seeing a decrease in the property tax values. So despite everything that's going on, we're in much better shape than some of these cities. Budget assumptions in this budget. What I'm proposing, at least tonight, it's going to be a little bit of a scenario between bad and the good. The good is your strategic plan. Assuming inflation slows down, we're starting to chip away towards those goals. So I've got those taped in front of you. If we do not follow some of the transparencies I have for the tricks, and I'll call them tricks. If we do not go with those suggestions, I'm quite certain your strategic plan will be further than 2 years out. Worst case scenario, I've kind of hinted at you guys in CA reports. Worst case scenario is up there. So if you go with my plan, if we run into inflation next fiscal year, we've got enough wiggle room where I think we can maintain our current operations. This budget I'm proposing in the fiscal year 25. If you don't agree with my plan, you'll just bump everything up 1 year if inflation continues to rise. So normal budgets, it's gonna be, status quo. We don't know if things are gonna slow down or not. So those are the two scenarios. I want to work towards your goals, but I have to have a plan in the back end. If things are working or not working. So basically, best way to explain it is there's just a couple different scenarios. My budget assumptions are 6% increase in permanent wages. 8% is current inflation. 6% is not necessarily a guarantee, but it is what I have budgeted. Last year, we budgeted 4% and inflation was 6%. So it'll be 2 years in a row. Staff is seeing a 2% decrease. 10% increase in health insurance. It was 20% last year. I'm also at this time assuming everyone has at least single, and not everybody does. So I'm playing conservative and cautious. If we do go the route of working with a fifth police officer or Main Street. 25% increase all across the board in fuel, utilities, travel, and equipment. A $20,000 tax cut in revenue due to the business tax cut. And then the rollback. Conservative revenue in water, sewer, just in general. I'm assuming no new growth or no new sewer and water rate increases. One thing to think about, two last things to think about, it's still a work in progress. As we're starting this a little bit earlier in my evaluations, I didn't get one of our counties until last week, and they're supposed to have them in by December. So there's still a little bit of a work in progress, but for the most part, it's 95% done. Last thing I want you to know about, I'm going to be transparent. I made quite a few cuts. I did apply a lot of transparencies and tricks. When you see my bird's eye summary in the general fund, you're going to see that there's only a $16,000 surplus. In reality, we're probably sitting at 100, and I'll tell you why. I'm just being transparent because I don't know what inflation's going to be. So I don't want to say that's hire a fifth police officer if inflation continues to rise. That's not going to be a good idea. But I'll kind of show you where I'm being transparent and where I'm being conservative or where I'm overspending, just to be transparent. I don't want it to look like we have this huge surplus when I don't know what's going to happen. General new format. Great, this only printed half of my stuff. Anyways, new format.
I got it on one.
Yeah. That would be helpful. Thank you. Oh, there you go. Tax rate assumptions where I missed that. Each year I do something different. I just compared our rates to Cedar, Johnson, and Jones. We're pretty much in the middle in terms of our tax rates. Reserve requirements, we're a little bit behind on general fund, not far behind. We're doing well in hotel motel, capital projects, short and liability. We got a little bit of work to go. Employee benefits, we've got quite a bit sitting there. Local option, sales tax, that one kind of varies. We'll talk about that a little bit more next week. Road use tax needs a little bit of work, but water, sewer, storm sewer, we're still sitting. So most of our funds we're sitting at a healthy balance. And we'll continue to strive for those reserve requirements you guys passed last year.
State requirements?
Our internal. And we voted on last year. Ideally, you want 3 months or 25% in savings in case there's an emergency. And I know we think it's an emergency now, but let's say another derecho happens during this inflation, we're gonna need some emergency funds on hand. Little bit of a new format. I tried to make it a little bit easier on Heidi's end. So it may just look a little bit different. I'll show you the bird's eye summary view. What really matters to you as the elected official is what I highlighted in brown. That would show your balance at the end of the year and your projected ending balance in those funds. We have a lot more funds in these. These are just the ones I'm talking about today. But anything you look on the left is the nitty gritty stuff. where you're talking revenues, expenses, transfers. But really what matters probably the most for you guys is, do we have a surplus or not? How much money are we sitting in those accounts? For when you get further into these line items, you will see revenue I highlighted in green and expenses in gray. So if you ever get confused, what's a revenue or what's an expense later on in the presentation. I tried to make those color coded. I do want to remind us what we have accomplished. I know things sometimes look grim, but the fact that we are able to budget for 6% in wages means in a normal inflation year, we'll be able to implement our merit wage pay policy. I know we're not quite there, but no one expects 8% inflation. We do have that maintenance agreement with the water tower that addresses painting the water tower. I know it's not in our big capital improvement plan, but I know that's something that council's been moving towards. We still have that Wapsie Creek cleanup grant. We've got our CIP plan coming that'll help both in terms of safety and beautification when you're talking the entrance in town with the roundabout, and then health and safety with the east side water mains where there is some lead connections and some safety issues. So I don't want us to forget that we have had a lot of progress despite harder economic times. In fiscal responsibility, we're moving much closer to our reserve requirements and even local option sales tax. No matter what happens to it, at the end of the day, one day we're going to have to say, we're sitting on 200,000. What are we going to do with this? So that's why we've got the Park and Rec master plan coming out this winter in spring. We're going to have surveys, try and figure out the best way to spend that money. I'm going to hound you guys in your plan, as I said. I'm going to continue to do. We're working towards renewing local option sales tax. I'm going to watch and see what the state does. They may change local option sales tax like they tried to do last year. But I'm trying to push that to February discretion. Support ways to alleviate public safety trends. As long as inflation slows down, we have, I guess, flexibility to make the fifth officer work by fiscal year 26. Police have made the first move by delaying the purchase of one of their vehicles. They're going to push it out 1 year and then continue to support on-call pay, the fire department through Hometown Hoover Days concerts. Each month, we'll continue to talk about reevaluating programs and services the city offers to think through our labor hours and our costs to the city. Lead service line budgeted more labor time for that service line inventory as well as meter upgrades as we move to more of a 24/7 Wi-Fi system. City office succession plan, we have a 20-hour week position for water and sewer coordinator or deputy clerk, however we want to call it when we get there. This is in hopes to either save some labor on libraries or start training a replacement for Leslie. Fiscal year 25 is when it will be full-time. Heritage Square still has a healthy fund. We want to talk more next week on the east side downtown revitalization. Once we reimburse ourselves through TIF, we're going to be sitting on 150,000 that could be moved towards a downtown project. That'll be more of a discussion. Obviously, staff is leaning towards Heritage Square, but it's you guys that make the final call.
That's reimbursable. Yeah.
So we just tipped it in December to pay for those grain bins with Blaine. We're gonna pay 150,000. We had 150,000 of pre-askings in TIF for 1 year. So we figured we would just roll that cost in it. And then going forward, that 150,000 is gonna go towards the roundabout payments. So it just was a random luck of the draw. We had a gap to ask for 150,000. That wouldn't affect the county and it wouldn't affect the school. It wouldn't affect our budget. So that's why we have that money that we did not think we would have last year when we were talking. So. We've got surplus in all of our accounts. Last year, we did not. So we're moving forward on that end. Sidewalk repair, we'll kind of work on that internally. We are tracking that for fiscal year 25 or 24 to 27. Fiscal year 26. It would be nice to try and enter an agreement with Main Street. Will depend on funding availability, hotel, motel funds, and health benefits costs, which we'll talk more about next week. All right, here are my what I call my transparent items. Everything in here that I've done is 100% within my authority to do, but I still believe in checks and balances, which is why I'm being transparent. Here's why I was able to cut $150,000 plus when I didn't really cut 150,000 directly. I used some tricks, and one of those transparent tricks is I'll kind of throw it in as an example, but we've got right here is street budget. This is how much we spend in street wages. What I'm doing, taking a portion of this, moving it to storm sewer. I'm also taking a corner of general fund money, which is smaller, moving it to streets. It frees up general fund money. It's not as expensive on streets. Those are our two worst, I wouldn't say worst, our two most concerned budgets are those two.
General fund and
Streets. Yes. There's more stuff than that's going on. But in sample form, what I'm doing is I am finding other places where I can use for wages. And again, that is probably going to be what is most controversial. My understanding in 2016 is it was supposed to be for projects only, the storm sewer, but there is nothing in writing in our ordinance. There is nothing that says that the city administrator cannot recommend that. It really comes down to, and I think council or Colton was on the council at that time and you guys weren't. But essentially I'm saying, to be transparent, you didn't put this in writing. I have the authority to recommend. That is me being transparent.
wages for the guys, some of them will come from storm sewer fund instead of the general fund or the streets fund.
Right. More transparent items. Again, I had Chief cut purchasing a vehicle this year and moving it back 1 year. When we had this discussion with him, normally I'm like a lean and green or green and mean budget where I'd rather have a little bit less in staff. So you've got more room to work with, either with equipment or wages or training or projects. But when it comes to the police department, she feels people or officers is number one. So he made the move to delay purchasing that equipment by 1 year. I did gut as much as I can with the new director. There's a little bit more I can cut, Parks and Rec. I cut a little bit from library. I did not include what fence permitting fees would cost. That's hard to determine, but I did cut credit card fees as a cost. Cemetery fees we'll discuss a little bit more. And then those tipping fees for the landfill. Maintaining the fire department apparatus. It is a large chunk of money, 135,000. But I will remind council that what they're saving is about 200 and some thousand. That's essentially what we get from rural. So I didn't feel at this time we should cut into that, but just know there's quite a bit sitting there. You know, it's gonna be your guys' call. I feel like we probably don't fund them quite enough, but that's a good chunk of change to be sitting on.
Well, the next tanker's gonna cost $800
Yep.
million.
Yep.
The next truck.
We'll talk more about limiting home rebates, but I want to move that to no more than 1,000 a year, and we'll just prolong the program a little bit longer. I do have eliminating our Sedco membership. I did not budget this a reduction in overtime, but I would expect me to start pushing to be a little bit smarter with overtime. No, that's not 100% popular, but if you want merit wage pay, it's hard for us to afford that and a bunch of overtime. So there needs to be some give from staff. And cutting back a little bit on leaf program, we still want to continue it. Matt and I are working on it, whether we do it for a few less weeks or whether we just do it Monday. We're still, you know, with the 3 times a week. And then raising storm sewer fees a whole bunch. You know, whether you guys want to raise it a little bit, that's fine, but with the increase in water and sewer and then the CIP, it's kind of a lot that's going to be hitting the public. And then cut public works request to purchase skid loader. Couple other things we've talked about that I didn't budget, but just to keep in the back of your head is brush pickup. If we continue to do that, it'd be ideal to get your guys' input. I do have in this budget as some of our flexible money for cameras and a fence out there. If we're not going to continue the program, that's 15,000 I don't have to spend. So just, and it's 8,000 a year we spend shipping. So we'll want to talk about that a little bit further before I spend that money. But I do have it in there as my transparent, flexible money. Moving away from Hoover Hometown Days could save us another 10,000 a year. The best I could think of is about 414 administrative planning hours go into Hoover Hometown Days. Times that by about 30. That's probably what you're talking about cost-wise, but we're still going to be here. So I figured I would just use hours. Some could argue it's not a responsibility of the city to be the main lead. We still kind of need a decent. So those are things, if you've got opinions on, it would be nice to hear and get your feedback. Stormwater, I did not increase or did not include this. If we did a 50-cent increase, it would be in line with what the average city in Iowa did this past year. That's why I included that exact amount. As I said, a lot of water, sewer increases, and then taxes for the CIP plan. So
50 cents per bill,
Per
per
month.
water bill.
So $6 a year, essentially, per building. So. Then town hall cleaning fees. That's probably the last on my priority to kind of look into, but it has been requested by some council members to make sure that we are looking into that. But I did not add that in this budget. It's just too much at one time with what we've got. What questions do you have before I pass it on?
I guess I got a couple. I know how hard we fought previous administrators to have a set aside program for equipment. Police department for their cars and the public works department for their equipment. So if we are not going to participate in the set aside for the police department this year to save money, how much money is in their set aside? When do we plan on reinstating it? When do they think they're gonna get a new car?
If you want to answer that, we are still giving him money in the set aside. He can answer his capital improvement.
So I would have addressed that when I came up later. But basically what we're doing is our give is to just not spend money out of our set aside this year. So what we would have budgeted for would have been 70 to roll 35 in from our set aside, and then you guys have been giving me 35. You're still gonna give me the 35. We're just gonna build a reserve up to handle future years.
One more year.
Mhm.
We weren't buying a car this year anyway. Didn't we just get done buying one?
Well, we bought one 2 years ago, it just took a year to get it. And then we paid for it last year. Which is why you're gonna see big.
Oh, most of it came out
Yeah, most of it came out.
this fiscal
current
year.
Okay.
year, but basically, we're still on track, we're just pushing it a year.
Part of it is to build the reserve, because you're gonna need additional training
Yeah.
and things like that.
So
And they have $109,000.
And that reserve
Their
be
reserve.
used for that training can, obviously we could, I suppose.
okay, that was for the police department and for public works. Did you have money set aside for your skid loader?
Basically really similar. We're just gonna take the money and set it aside. I think it's more a safety thing. So the money will be there next year. We purchase it. We get, we got to the end of the year and stuff kept going how it is. And we had to use the money for some other emergency. We'd at least have the money then instead of when we bought the skid loader. They'll put us a year behind, but it's not a huge deal. We have a skid loader that's 10 years old. We've done some work on it, so it'll be fine for that purpose.
I guess my question for the brush pickup is if we end up getting rid of our brush pile, what is the alternative? There has to be an alternative. You're just gonna have sticks sitting around town.
I'll say I'm not in favor of eliminating the brush pile. I'll just say that.
The one option would be Johnson County refuse. And we're looking into that, so you have an option. I'm not saying do it, which is why it's not in my budget, but there are options, and it would add another fee to.
It'd be a blanket fee that everybody pay whether they used it or not.
If they have,
And I don't
would
like
they have
that
to
at
have a
all.
card? I mean, you gotta buy the card, the landscape card.
I don't know what their program's like, we've asked them if we're getting. information. But yes, there'd either be a card or a bag or something.
Okay, so on that. I don't understand why we're letting commercial users dump for free. Just because it's city residents' trees that they're cutting down. I don't agree with that. I think the brush piles should be for residents that are hauling their own brush to get rid of it. And the current commercial guys that go in and cut customers' trees, they haul their stuff wherever and get rid of it themselves, not make us pay for it.
There's a couple tweaks that Leslie's got a couple good ideas, a couple tweaks with what you're talking about. I have nothing in the budget. I just. have that as a discussion.
pickup?
Yeah.
I didn't know what that meant. Just pickup or the whole brush? pile?
They don't need gates and cameras for picking it up. So they were getting rid of the pile.
Make sure it was getting a quick.
Well.
Pickup.
Just opening up the floor for all discussion. It was not in my budget.
Well, see, that's the thing, if you just go residential, then they can haul it up there themselves, you don't have to babysit it and haul it up there for
You do have to babysit it.
Yeah, they'll dump it over
Well,
in the ditch.
Or you'll have the
Well-
commercial guys doing it.
Just a little bit. But I'm still not in favor of getting rid of that program.
I just don't see where there's a viable option if we don't.
Other town.
In Coralville, you have to pay.
It's part of your city service though.
No, you pay extra.
Oh.
Mhm.
is it a bag or you just? pay
It's a
it?
bag.
Yeah, but you could load it up and take it to the landfill.
I sure could.
Yeah, for nothing.
We can't do that.
No, You
I
pay.
don't think there's a charge for, there might be a minor charge for.
It's a minor charge,
Minor
but you
charge.
still pay.
Where?
Iowa City landfill.
Yep.
The transfer station? I don't think they take
They won't
yard
take it.
waste.
No, they won't take it.
Garner, what we did was we had two big dumpsters that everybody could drop it off into. And then our, our dumpster company would come and pick it up and, that had misuse too. I mean, it's just,
Oh, yeah. I can find a washing machine in there.
so that was not a perfect system. It's just versus us doing brush pickup every week, it was just once a month.
I mean, I'm not against getting rid of the pickup service as long as they have someplace they can take it.
That's what I.
But then on the flip side of that, you'd almost have to, like, just for example, if your mom needed to get rid of some brush, she can't get rid of it, and there was no kids and stuff, and she's just a little old lady living there. She may have to hire Johnny to come get her stuff. Well, Johnny should be able to take it to the brush pile.
That's not what I'm talking
I
about.
know that's not what you're talking about, but when you say commercial, like, actually that is.
In Grant, well,
I know what you mean. The old tree service can't come take the tree down. and they go
Yeah.
Right.
End up
That's
with it.
correct.
Paying for it.
And charge to.
Charge them to get rid of it.
Right.
They had a certain diameter.
so I think we're talking Durant, I think they require them to be chipped. And then they have to ship them, at our dump site. So there's different ways to do it rather than just, outright cancel. We're just opening the floor for discussion.
And most other cities, it sounds like they don't have people that monitor it because they'll put it on their Facebook pages and say the same kind of thing, that if they keep seeing people doing things they're not supposed to be there, and they close it altogether. So, and there've been times where they close it temporarily because people have abused. What they're doing.
So we don't actually have a chipper. We contract that.
I think that's part of mine, always been my issue. That's about. Around town is 24-inch, 24-inch chunks of wood just sitting that people expect us to pick up.
A log.
That's a log, that's
Or-
well and above brush pickup. That is not brush.
Right.
That is a tree trunk. So I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I have no problem with brush. I mean, you get brush to me is if you can get it in one of those paper
Bundle it up.
bags
Paper bag.
or tie some bundle of sticks together, sure, fine, but people throw giant chunks, like, oh, I had a tree fall down in my backyard, let me go chop it up and just go lay it on the side of the street.
Well, it goes the same for those people that also have the one little bundle of sticks. That you drive by, you don't see it, and then they call us and say, hey, they missed my sticks. Well, where were they? Well, there's just a little pile, so, takes as much effort to stop the car to get out that one little pile than it is to grab two great big bags and toss it and get back. So,
Take that and throw it in the trash.
yes, so I said, so we have, it's both ways, it's just, it takes a lot of time and labor for them to drive up and down every single street, looking for that little pile that, might be someone's yard waste, or it might be something that, just happened to blow in a pile.
And that's been some feedback I've gotten is some council members feel like Public Works has other things to do than pick up people's sticks. So it's all your philosophy and what services you think we should offer.
Okay, the leaf pickup, last thing, I think once a week or twice a week is adequate.
I think we have to do it.
Mondays, Monday morning.
I think we have to do it because it'll clog our intake.
I think once a week. I don't think things do twice a week. You go once,
Mhm.
you get the town done and you're done. It takes 2 days, it takes 2 days, it takes 2 hours, it takes 2 hours.
Go ahead.
Laura, you, Matt, so you got more questions?
Oh,
Surely there's more than just me was gonna pick your stuff apart. Oh, no.
That's what I say, how often do we do brush pickup now?
Every Monday.
Mondays.
From April till
April
the first Monday in April through like the last Monday in November.
I think it was like 212 hours. I think I calculated something like that.
And we could change it, it's just, that's just what we have. That once a week, so. I mean, we can do every other week or something, it's just,
It's just bigger loads
yeah.
and
Maybe then it's worth your time if it's bigger load.
That's kind of.
Yeah.
Some
I wouldn't be
places-
opposed to that.
That's good places do. Brush pile days,
money of the month.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Open it up for Saturday, 8 hours. Show up.
Yeah,
and
we
you just
tried-
a window.
it was on-
We thought about that, but then they all fought over who would have to be the one that was there on Saturday.
That's an overtime. Hey. Unless the mayor and council want to sit up there.
I guess the one other question I have is the stormwater increase of 50 cents. See how I word this, so it makes sense.
I'm not opposed to it.
I'm not opposed,
Go ahead.
I'm opposed to taking the wages out of the stormwater fund. Because that was not the intentions of the stormwater fund. When it was made up. I'm not gonna say that we shouldn't do it, because we have to. But the question I have is our 50% increase. And then the amount of wages you're taking out. Is there still going to be more money in the stormwater fund when it's all said and done? Less, or was it a break even deal?
Effectively break even. It would have been $1.50 if we would have done it 3 times a week. So if we bumped it down to once a week, 50 cents, which was in line with the average raise and.
So basically, this was just something you did to help pay the,
If you wanted to break even.
to help pay the
Wages.
wages. It's not really going to enhance our stormwater.
Correct.
And in that fund, we only have $142,000.
Only, that sounds like a lot of money compared to a lot of.
Well, it
other-
depends on what projects you want to do.
Well, but we can't do any. If you're raising it up and
We're
you're,
gonna do.
if you're gonna start just milking the fund to do everyday operations, you're not gonna do projects.
It's everyday operations related to storms.
You would still have
It's related to storms.
2/3 of the budget would still be towards maintenance and projects. Essentially a third that would go, like, which is in line. Actually, it's lower than most of our funds. It's probably higher than a third goes to labor.
So
But
just-
Colton, I think we were seeing the same thing. We only have $142,000. So if we put wages in there.
Right.
Well,
We're
wages-
diminishing the.
wages-
Right, that's what, exactly.
Be lowered by 25,000,
It'll be about 20,
huh?
about 20,000. When we get the storm sewer, it's about 20,000. To have that budgeted in wages for storm sewer wages.
Well, the water wages ought to lower. At least 20, if not 25.
It's the street, that's where. That's where it's getting complicated and that's where I move. Money essentially, I moved that 20,000 from streets. Essentially to storm sewer, and I moved essentially about 18,000 or 15,000 from the general fund streets. To streets itself, which freed up 15 to 20,000 in the general fund. That's why I'm saying it's,
Why was our water guy getting paid out of streets?
Cause some of the work that he did was streets.
you only got paid about 5%.
Oh.
So,
I mean, when he jumps in a plow truck. Water shouldn't have been paying that.
I can't remember, 5 or 10%, something.
Well,
like
yeah,
that.
but you shouldn't be able to gain 20,000 out of the streets for that little bit of time.
So the other thing I was looking at. Which we haven't gotten that far yet, but it does kind of all tie into this conversation. Is that cemetery deal? That's just a money sucking hole, right?
Yes.
Good.
What's that?
That is,
Money sucking hole.
that is why you don't have a pool, essentially. That's about what your lot would be for a pool.
You still don't make money because what you charge for the plots, you'll never,
You did mention making the cemetery.
they're not a monthly fee where they got You gotta do that. You tax everything else, you gotta say, okay, so every month they're there, you're gonna have to send $12, you know?
And they do in some, they do in like LA County. You gotta pay a deposit and keep paying on it.
How do you evict them?
Oh, gosh.
Dig 'em up.
That's been my conversation with some residents or some staff that, you know, yes, we're behind on some park and rec things, but for example, someone doesn't have a cemetery to compete with. Tiffin doesn't have a library or a cemetery, you know, so when we compete, we compare ourselves to other communities, we have different things that we have prioritized in the past.
Is that really a calling card for your town? You can die here. You can die here, we can put you here.
I'm just saying. Well, you wanna make the move to abolish the cemetery? Go for it.
We just annexed it like 5 years ago.
Well, we already own it. You can't get rid of it now. You're still gonna have to take care of it. That expense is still there.
Just don't mow it.
Cemetery?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That don't
Put a
work.
house there.
What was that? Yeah, cemeteries are.
That'd be a prairie. Consider natural prairie.
Well, I don't know though. There's probably a bunch of pollution in the water runoff, stuff like that, to have carcinogens in the water or whatever.
Maybe when you die.
Our cemetery.
Won't be no grass growing on my grave.
Leslie would have a memory.
Are the cemetery plots only $100?
No.
No, certain sections are, but then the memorial section where it's a flat stone is required, which is to the east of the honor circle. That's the memorial section. They're $100 per space. Some of the old sections are $100. There's not that many left, but the new sections are $250. We require that you buy two. So it's $500. Otherwise they're laid out in space sections of 4 or blocks of 4, so it's $1,000. I have heard that our spaces are reasonable, extra reasonable, and our cremation burials are super cheap. And those are something that we can look at to either increasing or having Dean Brothers do it. Dean Brothers provides a cremation burial for $325. We pay our guys time to go up there, dig a hole, babysit the hole, pay them on overtime, where, you know, there's ways we could probably adjust things like that. I think they still have to go and mark this, they'll still have to go up and mark the graves, make sure they're being, you know, dug in the right spot. But there's probably some savings there that we can make some adjustments on.
It's a money sucking pit. She said.
Better out on it.
And also because we are a city owned cemetery, we're required to put 60% of the lot sales in a perpetual fund that we can never touch. So of that that $500 that we'll sell for 2 lots, that we put $300 in the bank in the perpetual fund, and the city only gets 200 of that. It just sits in a fund that we can never spend. It's supposed to be for beautification. It's for the beautification or repairs, but we can only spend the interest. And there's like, I don't know how much is in our perpetual cemetery.
Well, that ain't make no sense. I mean, you only charge, so the money just sits there forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Never
don't
die.
spend any of the money you
Ironic.
have in here.
And can't nobody spend it.
But
And that nobody can ever spend, just sits there.
we don't sell that many cemeteries.
We have about 92,000.
Oh, there.
Well, I mean, I'm not thinking we should, but a fund that you can never spend it is not, it ain't worth
Sounds
nothing.
like that's state law. Perfect, makes sense.
Then they can touch it. I bet they can touch it.
They got all these cemetery funds just floating around the state, just waiting.
That is pretty.
That's stupid.
Nice lawnmower.
Yeah, that was our thought. You do a lawnmower or the chip and seal, you know.
Yeah, why do we need grass at all?
They buy a lawnmower every 5 or 6 years.
So we took and seal the whole thing. First one. Congrats.
All right, anybody else, anything before we have Matt? Talk about street?
Just real quick, I just wanted to point out, if you go to, the, code, the West Branch Code of Ordinances, under chapter 102, stormwater code, if you wanna get yourself familiar with that, where it does talk about the purpose of the stormwater utility when it was created. Section 3, so it's 102.01 purpose, and then it's the third paragraph. Maybe that will help.
Go ahead, Matt.
Have a whole lot because we didn't make any huge changes to anything. Just kind of touch on our ones that we did make changes to. So our big ones would be,
You got the expenses? Gee.
That?
Is that what you're looking at?
I mean, I got,
Yeah, he's talking expensive.
yeah, yep. So our main thing that the biggest thing was the skid loader that we are just putting money aside instead of purchasing. Signs and sign materials have went up quite a bit because of the steel. So posts and things like that are quite a bit more expensive. We still need quite a few, and with the new developments and then some of the older parts of town needing new signs, we are having to bump that up a little, so that's a little bigger. Other than that, in the big, so our capital project line where we normally pull our street repairs and seal coat and all of that out of, we don't have any major projects in there. So we just have seal coat, and then there's about 14,000 in there for other things. 9 to 14, somewhere in there. We're gonna try to keep the seal coat at 35,000 or so. And we'll just have to pick and choose kind of the worst parts so we can fix that. And then, yeah, like I said, we don't have any major projects. We do, or do we take that out?
What do we usually spend? What do we spend this year on steel coat?
We, right at 35. So we've had years where we spent 80, we've had years where we spent 50.
Premium's not that bad right now.
No, basically what we'll do is go around the spring, pick out the worst sections. Measure it up, and then we kind of go from there, and we go back and we pick and choose the worst parts of it and decide what we're gonna do until we can whittle it down to 35. They go out, they do the work, and sometimes they use less cold patch or
Yeah,
tar or whatever, and we'll add to it till we get right to that, so we don't overspend that. But there's some in there just for patchwork if we have a street that blows out a square or something that we're gonna have to replace. Other than that, I mean, utilities have gone up across the board on every one of these budgets. So we'll see increases on all of those. I guess I don't have a whole lot else on streets unless somebody has a question.
So. Yes, sir. So when we blow a water main, does that come out of water? Or part of it come out of streets? Because you gotta patch the street? I mean, I guess.
Usually if we have a water main, break, the portion we had to take out for the street repair will come out of water. So the whole, basically the replacement of all the concrete, everything that we put back comes out of
So
water.
everything comes out of water.
Now, if it happens to be close to another square that's destroyed and we decide to tear that out, we'll pay for a chunk of it out of streets and the rest of it out of water. We kind of split it up, so water's paying for the damage it caused and street still pays for what it should. Then we do the same thing with sewer, so if we replace a manhole, or the top restoration will come out of sewer for them.
So when we do the start doing the east side. Then we talk about when we start doing like College Street, it's a college and Orange. And part of Green, weren't we gonna replace them instead of seal coat,
Asphalt.
Right now, we have it
like curb
split
and
up.
gutter? and-
Yeah, the only one that we have in this first phase is College Street, Fifth to Sixth. That's not the only one for water main, but that's the only one for street replacement. So that street would get replaced with a concrete street, curb and gutter. So basically everything, storm sewer, whatever we need there. And then on Sixth Street, that main gets replaced. A couple other spots, I can't think. South Second by Cedar, there's a chunk over there, and then South First. And on Main Street from Fifth to Fourth. So, and we're in the process of working through that right now, but that's the only street that'll actually get replaced. Sixth Street will get a third of the street replaced from almost Main Street to Francis Abel's house. About halfway up to College on the west side, just because there's storm sewer there, and that's where most of the water main's gonna be put in. Is on that west side. That'll all be done, yeah, as part of that project, so none of it'll come out of streets.
What have you got for projects for streets projects? We don't, Green
don't
New
have
Connection and that's about it. Finish that.
I mean, yeah, that'll be part of the seal coat work.
Seal,
Yeah, that'll be the first part we
That's all
do.
there is.
We have a patch on water, and then it'll just be whatever needs done. What's that? Yeah, just a seal coat over that rock
that's
that's
all.
there. Well, it's gonna go on to next, cause we only do the seal coat once a year, so. It's gonna go on to the next, we could get it done in
Oh,
June,
I
I
see.
could build till
I see.
July.
Yeah, right.
It's done before July.
Right.
I got a question about the water department's utilities.
Sure.
I'm just spitballing, but that building, the filters and all that stuff is in, that's a pretty decent sized building.
Yep.
If a guy put solar panels all the way up on the top of that, find it all full of solar panels. You think you could run all that stuff off of solar energy?
Possible, we had it evaluated probably 8-9 years ago, and they basically gave us a rundown of every single city building, what it would take to put panels on them. I mean, obviously the price has changed since then and what they can do, but yeah, I would think that it would be possible. I don't know how much.
You're not running it off those solar panels. You're collecting the solar, giving it to them. And
Right.
And they're paying you back.
Right.
Talked to Alliant, and I need to talk to a couple other contractors, but with Alliant, they felt like we do not produce enough electricity. What we could do is opt into their solar farm program where we buy a plot and then our utilities stay the same versus if we go with the private company, they become panels and we have to eventually replace the panels. So there's like a pro and a con between both types, but I've done the Alliance side of the research. I just need to talk with the private company.
Yeah, sometimes the company owns those and we lease them in a way, or we don't even own them, or maybe we do own them.
Last time when we talked to them, they would lease them to you at a different rate than what Alliant was selling you power for. And they would take what you made off of them. So if there was you didn't ever make anything, you just got power at a slightly lower rate. So if it's 12 kilowatt hours, it might be 8 or 12 cents per kilowatt hour, might be 8 cents per kilowatt hour or whatever. But that was, like I said, that was almost 9, 10 years ago.
I just think some time and effort needs to be put into looking into that to see if
I'd like. to
there's
do something.
somewhere where we could have a significant savings.
I don't know if city's different than residential, but I've looked at it, and Alliant does not pay anything. It will just take whatever power you give back.
Lake County REC is even worse, which is my.
Alliant won't pay for it. You wanna put extra power on the grid, they'll take it. Are they gonna give you anything for it? Like 0.005.
What's that net Abson?
They don't care.
It's like
So
3
the
to
way
5
they,
cents,
no,
6 or 8 cents.
Alliant is awful. They will.
They pay you back.
No,
I don't
Not
know. I
residential.
just had solar panels put in my yard and I'm still getting. We just turned them on like 3 weeks ago and I'm still like figuring out how far that's going.
the residential, they will not pay that. I don't know if it's- Most of the time, what they size it for is to wash. So essentially, you buy the solar panels from the third party company.
I think it's a little better than a wash. It just-
Even if it's a
No,
water,
no, it's terrible when it comes to that. An American, fantastic. We don't have that option. America will pay you back money, line of mine. So what they do is wash, otherwise they're just taking electricity you make free. So what they do is wash the bill, and then you pay the company to lease the solar panels at a lower rate. Your electric bill would be.
It's a longer payment, longer payment.
That's residential. Different. That's big. You got a lot of power there. They might not want power from my tiny little 20 by 20 roof. They might want power from a big shed.
We can look into it. Though. See. What we can do there. If there's nothing else on streets, I'll jump down the water. That one, we really don't have anything significant. Other than we are into the second year. Of the contract with. For the water tower maintenance.
Veolia. Used to be Suez, at the bottom. And, you know, same thing.
So we'll be in our second year of that. So we're paying. What was it? I believe we have one more year and then we'll be paying the tower. So since we're starting kind of late in the service contract, we had to pay a little more than if we were to be in it 10 years and then 20 years before we actually painted. So we have a fairly decent pay for the first year, which you guys saw I was charged when we pushed this through. Yeah, we got one more. So this year, we're supposed to do one of the towers. And then the south tower, that could change. They're looking at the paint on both, on to see which one was worse. But either way, next year, the other one will be painted, so in the next 2.5 years, we'll have both towers painted. And we have this larger payment for the next. So this year, it's about 41,000, we'll say. The next 4 years after that, it's about 75. So that payment's gonna eat up the money we use for whatever in water for the next 5 years to get those towers painted. Then after that, it starts dropping off and it goes back on 50 and then right around 30. And it sits at 30 basically for a long time. But that gets our towers on a 10-year cycle get painted. So every 10 years, they'll get painted, they get inspected. That's the main thing that we have on the water. We have some set aside that'll come out for the skid loader. We can have a little bit come out of everything. Since we use it for everything. And yeah, utilities are way up in the water. We have wells, high service pumps. Basically, all that stuff runs off of fairly large motors, so it's gonna draw a lot of power. Questions on water? Sewer, so sewer.
We have some money in the budget in the capital improvement line. It's not specifically pulled out for anything. It's mostly if we have to replace something. Right now, we've kind of been in a holding pattern while the wastewater treatment plant's done, so we don't spend a bunch of money and then, yeah, find out that we need something for. So we've been holding off on doing any televising and, lining. And hopefully that we get done with the plant, see where we're at with, cost per resident. We can step back in and doing our I work and lining pipes.
There's still work to do in that.
We're in about, the third phase, about halfway through it. And then we have some random stuff that we did kind of with different projects. So when we did a street project, we always did the sewer lines with them, whether we just televised them. Lined them, like First Street wasn't in the phase we already did, but we lined that. Since we're in New York, second street had some work done to it, still needs a little bit. But anything that we were putting New Street over, we made sure it was taken care of before it was coming up. So we didn't have any street. So we're in the third phase, which is 5 phases of the older lines. We did get that Stokey line replaced, and everything. Put chunk of that. Greenview is done. That's a lot more of the last phase. In the last phase, done with that. So we got rid of the real big contributors, and we still have kind of the center of town, about from First Street to Scott, we'll say, is what's still left. And that's, I mean, not that that's a small section, but we'll get back on that after the plant is taken care of. So yeah, for this year, we have some money in there in case we have a manhole needs replaced or a line that breaks. It's more gonna be repairs rather than just a bunch of proactive work. So we don't spend a bunch of money to get up out there in the position. Other than that, we do have side or set aside, we'll pull out of there also for the skid loader. And we do have a mower in the budget for this year, to replace one of the company that'll come out of several budgets, parks, a little bit out of water, a little bit out of sewer and cemetery. Very little out of water and sewer, but we didn't use it for another school bus and much like that.
You mentioned Main Street. In downtown Main Street. We talked about this a couple of years ago, maybe. Every one of them is Ripple. What does it cost? I mean, we're not gonna be able to replace Main Street.
Until debt expires.
Okay. So what does it cost to come in and grind it? So that those,
In front of the post office,
huh?
in front of the post office.
Well, even right here at Downey in Maine, it's the same way.
We did have it in the budget one
Yeah,
year
about 5 years, 4 years.
when we did the stormwater work on the north side of Maine from Second to or First Street up to Downey. And it's 26,000 to do that block in all new asphalt. And we got taken out. Not saying it was, we put it in and you guys took it out. Fine, but that's where we're at with it. So I haven't requested to put it back in because at that time you guys took it out because you didn't want to spend money on it.
Okay, let me ask this now then. If chip and seal, you have 44,000 budgeted. Why do we have to do those every year? Why can't you skip a year on that and grind that?
We could, it's just if we do, a road could completely blow apart in the summer. So when we're going out, so if you go over on, say, Green Street, doesn't get very much traffic. And we haven't seal coded it for a while, but if you go to the far off of 6th Street,
and look at that, that's gonna be gravel this spring. So we're gonna have to hit Green Street, even though I don't want to, because it seems like a waste. But the alternative is gravel. So when they get to the point where they're breaking into chunks, like have cracks, and then we get rain, and then people drive on them, they'll turn to rock. So that's the only reason. I mean, if we wanted to pull off and skip some, we can, but you might end up with. If you don't keep up on it. Right now, we do a lot of the type A work, I think it's type A. Where they just come in, they shoot it with oil and they put the rock down, they roll up, they're done. If you let it fall apart, it's the type B, which costs another $1 something per square yard. And they go in, they scrape it all up, compact it back in, then they hit it. That's the problem with, if we wait, you're taking a gamble that's not gonna happen. And if it does happen, then you might have to come back end of the year and do that seal coat that you skipped in. Or you get in the next winter and it falls apart, depending on. Be a winter like right now, the frost went back out, so the roads are soft again. So if we get snow, we're gonna destroy it.
I like what you're saying, and I wish we could do that.
I prefer.
Greenview blew apart.
Put another, yeah, not to put a penny in the seal coat, you just try to do other.
Well, we spent 8 years of getting rid of seal coat in our goals and watched them pull it out just as quick as we could put it in. Like what we said didn't matter.
Is that something you could keep in the back of your head when it comes time to do the seal coating, if you could save 15 or 20 grand?
Yeah, I mean, if we don't have to do it, we don't do it, but the problem is. Most years, so say most years 45 to 55 is what we need to do it. So last year we cut, I'll say 20,000 out because of the budget. So we already are cutting. So this year, that 20 that we cut out was like the next stuff. All right, we'll be putting that back in, adding 15 to it, but we'll be short another 20. So I'm gonna have some that the following year is gonna be the same thing. It's. Yeah, and it's
Just pushing it down.
yeah, and right now, I won't say our seal coat's terrible, but they're not that great of streets. When they only last a couple years, it's a good indication that there's issues underneath that need fixed. And that, you can't really do that without digging them up and putting.
If those seal coat roads are getting drove on that much that they have to be done every year, then they should be seal coated.
And for the
I mean,
Greenview.
No,
Greenview
Well,
really,
okay.
some of the
Green Street or Stratford?
Peter Johnson.
Main Street,
Beaver
And the
Johnson.
ones on the east side of town. The ones on the east side. of
Main
town,
Street.
uh,
Green Street. College Street. All those on the east side of town, they're not getting that much traffic. Well, we also don't put much gravel on it. Or whatever, rock or whatever it's called. It gets a layer of tar and some sand. That's what we're paying for. That's the 44,000.
I don't know. It seems like to me, and I've talked to you about this. Seems like they always do it at the wrong time of year, like they do it late in the year, so it doesn't have time to get hot, get bedded down, and then it rains and the plow trucks come, and then there's great big huge piles of pea gravel down at the ends of the intersections and stuff like that. It just
Well,
seems like we do
there's that
such a
road.
small amount that they push us off to the very end. But then I guess, we talked about it, the heat doesn't work good then either if it's too hot, so. There's like just a small window where it's like perfect time to do it. And
And then there's.
they ain't coming here to do
Belling.
$30,000 worth of work during their. peak
Well, yeah,
time.
but we always use Belling,
I've tried to get prices from other places. One that would actually do it. There's a couple that do seal coat, but they won't come here because they're either. They have deals with Pelling. Some of them have deals with Pelling because they buy their products from Pelling. Pelling doesn't want them in their area, so Klusner won't come down here. I don't know if they buy from compelling, and I don't wanna say that they do, and that's why they don't come here. But they don't come this far south. I think they go to 30. And south of there, they don't do seal coat.
Maybe I should start sealed.
And the other businesses that do it, they don't do as much. And they don't wanna give us like, they don't wanna come out, measure it up and say, we'll do this much for 35,000. They wanna get done and say, okay, we use this much rock, this much tar. We're gonna charge you this much. And that, we can't do that, because they might come back with 50, and when we're this tight. We can't be. Yeah, because they came back with a cheaper per unit price.
I just think Main Street's getting out of control.
Reason we
And-
elected, right? Bad now. You elected not.
Yeah.
You elected not to dump $30,000-$40,000 and make it look better, just to IADB should come through and destroy it all again. That's what-
Speaking of that, Sunday morning when they had that accident, there was a bunch of semis coming through here. I cornered one of the troopers up at the come and go and explained to them that I did not appreciate them detouring their traffic through our small little town, and that the state and the federal government doesn't give us no money for our roads, so maybe they ought to take their liberties somewhere else.
I thought
What do
they,
you say?
Well, we don't really have
Worded it
much
just like that.
choice. Yeah, I did. I said it just like that. I says, well, there's another one. He goes, that's where we're directing them, but we can't dictate where them semis decide to get off and go around. I says, okay, well, we may just we may dictate.
Yes, that was why we didn't do it. That was done.
So we did do, when we did the water main or water or sidewalks on the first section, which was a long time ago.
Between Downey and First.
14.
Yeah.
No, that one was, first one was from Poplar here east to Heritage Square. We did the road out in front of there because it was wavy like that. So we did the asphalt out to the center, not quite center line, but about center line. But North Downey has it. And then Main Street has it at Parkside. And the other end of it there.
it's only gonna get worse. With interstate construction and
So some of it has to do with it has concrete underneath of it. So that asphalt sliding on top of the concrete. It has like a cloth fabric underneath there and it moves on top of it. If you go cut it and pull some off, it'll like slide off in sheets. So that's the issue with it right now is that stuff moves. We'd have to, I mean, we could fix it, but it'd have to go down 2 rows probably. So there's 2 layers. We'd probably be looking at 4 or 6 inches. Probably 4 inches. Which we can do, it's just, like I said, this is what we have for money to do street repairs this year. If doing those intersections is something that council would rather see happen, I guess I just need to know if that's something we can work towards trying to do something like that.
I don't know, it's only gonna cost us more. I don't know,
Let's put up with it one more year and see.
it's gonna cost you inflation and everything, it's gonna cost you more. I don't know how to do it, but
I don't know where I was at. I
can't remember.
All right, move on, Matt.
I guess that's everything on stormwater, we don't really have a whole lot of conversation about the wages coming out of there.
Wages in Water Street.
Oh, Water Street.
Bedford / Eaton.
So Water Street's just the culverts. The east side. They put there's a new house in there. The homeowner wants it cleaned out. It's something we generally do, clean ditches, but we don't do a whole lot of it. We haven't We haven't put any budget, for a long time, but it was something we're gonna see if we could fit in there and get done. I talked to Larry about getting estimates on it. It's not a super expensive deal if we're just digging out ditches and letting water run through the pipes. If the culverts are plugged in, might be a different story. So, and I don't have a price on it yet. Other than that, we have to clean the retention pond, northern Bickford. Some of that by your house, where it dumps out of the pipe there. There's a bunch of rock back there that is cleaned up, and then some silt in the bottom. So. We have a small repair down at the shop, like 2 meetings. We're gonna try to do that here the next little bit, so that might be something that comes out of there in the next year.
That's not enough. What was the cost that you were given?
Oh, fix that? Like 90,000.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
So you're
But
talking-
that was to run. a
That was
spike.
a storm sewer all the way back bound by Beautiful Land Products, and it wasn't even more than that, wasn't it? It was a lot.
But that's about the only, the elevations there don't really make it possible for us to put storm sewer on our street or really anywhere, so. We have to clean our drains down the shop, so we're going to get a back down over that tile, so we can fix it. Or plug it off or something.
I thought all that was supposed to be taken care of when Cooney did his stuff.
Yeah. But I think
It's still wet.
I'm guessing the tile must go back in there and the water is just gonna be falling. I don't know where it goes.
You know how we was having that ice problem down around Hayden's and
It's still
stuff.
there.
I will say it's less.
It is less.
It's still
And until you get that figured out, there might as well not ever do anything with that road because it's all busted up because of that. That's why. Gets all that water in there. And that road's terrible. It's pretty near gravel.
Anything to add? Anybody else have any other questions?
Thank you.
What signs do you have on the budget to replace? Like I kind of noticed the speed limit signs for the school things are like faded. You can't hardly tell there's anything there.
Right. We don't have a specific like part of town. Last year we put in to do a bunch of the east side signs, so the street names and stop signs. We actually just purchased a huge pile of stop signs and no parking was a big one. Those are faded and they haven't been replaced in a long time, so. Logan is gonna start doing a lot of the sign work. And I had him go out and just start making a list. I think we're gonna split it kind of into maybe a section of town. We're gonna start south of 80 and do speed limit signs, basically everything out there on Downing 300 from Baker Council. And Industrial Drive and then keep coming north until we get to probably Main Street and that
So-
way that'll be a huge part.
So out at the park, we replaced a bunch of signs out there, just something to look at. I don't know, maybe the city's got different rules. They wouldn't let you do it anyway. But they wanted like $85, $95 for a stop sign. You know, and then, but I found these decals, they're the exact same decals. You just clean off the old sign and lay them right off over the old aluminum stuff. You don't even have to take them down if you didn't want to. They were like $4, you know, so maybe instead of just replacing the signs, maybe you could just re-decal.
There are some towns who do that. They're generally the little bigger communities that have like set sign people, like 3 guys and just do signs and they build their own signs, which it's not something that we can't look into. So for us, I think we pay in maybe 39 per stop sign.
With the decal 6, and that was what I was paying for them, as many as you'd have to buy, it probably like less than that.
Yeah, we can definitely look into that too.
Let me back up. On the water, sewer, utilities clerk, as we're kind of figuring out what to do. Just a couple big reasons. A, the state is requiring more and more reporting. We're doing more and more calculations on our end. And Heidi and Leslie can kind of explain that in further detail. Some of the calculations that even we were doing 2 or 3 years ago has now expanded due to some of the rollback. They've shifted those roles from the county flat out to the city. We've seen an uptick just in our growth in general of more people moving in and out or moving on different sides of town. We're seeing an uptick in utility changes with new homes and frequent builders. Without a doubt, is the most common question we get from residents is water and sewer. Time card wise, when I look at the time card, look at Heidi's, Leslie's, my hours, generally work 45 on average, if not more, in our department heads outside of Parks and Rec, and when there's not snow, are generally at 80 or whatever, 40 to 42. So there's more hours in our office. We're going to transition. There's an uptick in changes in how often we're changing our utility accounts. And then in general, if we do go with my proposed budget, we are cutting the pie in more pieces, which means more data entry. And I kind of will have Heidi maybe explain how tedious her job can be, and why there's a lot of hours on that end. And in terms of specifics, what it looks like, ideally, it would be nice if, depending on what we work out with the library, if it doesn't work out with the library, generally, it would be nice for someone that takes accountability for the water and sewer accounts and some of that data entry. And that would free up some payroll, which would free up time on Heidi's end. You would free up time on Leslie's end, and then it would be somebody that would know how to do some of the building permits, as well as help me with nuisance letters, making sure they're spell checked and they're accurate and they're worded correctly and in a positive manner. And then all these things, I would say, we're trying to research, where are we spending too much time, or where are we not charging enough? Those are things that we're so far behind on that I think having somebody part-time in the office would alleviate some of those things. But I don't know, Heidi, I know it's a little bit on the spot, but you can kind of explain why your job is getting more and more.
Yeah, as Adam talked about, there's a lot more reporting that we need to do to the state. And some of the calculations that were done before by the counties are now being pushed to the cities. So that takes a lot more time, and it's very detailed oriented. So it does take a lot of time for me to not only review it, but enter it in a manner that is correct. With more debt that we are incurring, that also adds more to this position itself as well. And it's not just a once in a year or once a quarter, it's, you know, every single claims report that you see. And it's not just the actual reviewing, like I said, it's entering everything into our system itself. it is not something that I just, put a number in. I have to enter vendor number, the amount. Everything that you see is very manual. And so it does take up a lot of time. Now with this position acquiring payroll as well, it takes a lot more time. And so I think I've been being very efficient. But it also takes time for me to do some of the research that I think should be done, or it just takes more time. Me working 90 hours is a given, and sometimes, of course, even more depending on where we are with the season. Also for us this year, moving from the Wellmark plan that we had before to what we have now, I have to do claims almost every single week where I didn't have to do that before. So that is a lot more time that I have to do as well. And I mean, that's just kind of the top of it. I mean, there's a lot more, but it is very time consuming, and to do it well, I mean, you have to really have focus. And there are times where if people come in and Leslie's out to the post office or whatever, I have to stop what I'm doing, of course, go help people, and then have to go back and refocus on what's going on.
Theory in this budget, I've got 20 hours a week allocated, and a good chunk of that's coming out of water and sewer, since their primary responsibilities will be water and sewer. So to Jody's point, when she was saying, why isn't there 20,000 less? That's because that 20,000 essentially was paying for that part-time employee. So no, there's 100 things going on in this budget. I'm trying to be as transparent as possible, but it's not a status quo budget in some of those things. And if you got questions, feel free to even ask me, after this, just during the day, but to a certain extent, yes, ask me questions now, but you're gonna have to also trust that I'm gonna be transparent with you at the same time, so.
I got a question. While we're at the sewer part, I spaced it off. So when we raised the sewer rates, we raised them in to what we thought we needed them to be for the expansion. Then we were gonna set those aside to help pay for the expansion. Looked all through the revenues for sewer revenues, and I could not find that anywhere.
Think how much we have in the special sewer fund.
Yeah,
So I looked it up today. It was about a little less than $600,000.
so when we start talking about the surplus on the front, was that taking into account that special amount? I mean, that special fund amount? Because I looked on the sewer funds, and that's the revenues. I didn't see no special.
Yeah, we have that. It's account 611. And I just checked it this morning. We have a little less than $600,000 in
I
there.
can give you the full form if you need it. I try not to give you a
No,
3,000 line item.
no, that's fine.
We've got it, and in
Yeah.
that surplus, we're including that $600,000 debt payment.
Okay,
So this is what we have. Now, mind you, this is last month's. It's a little bit more, but that's straight here.
okay.
And this December, we paid our first interest payment on that project, wastewater treatment project. A little less than $300,000. We will pay this year for our first principal interest payment.
Okay, where are we at next?
Okay. Did we not just go through this whole printer leasing, buying thing?
Yes, I was just gonna ask the
Yeah, I
same
wanted that.
question. Thought we decided we just gonna run ours till it burnt down.
Yeah. We just went through this 2 years ago, a year ago.
So we
2
stop,
years ago.
what are we're paying a minor maintenance fee, or we're just paying for the paper?
We are paying a quarterly
So-
maintenance fee.
My question is, what,
Stop leasing.
what,
We own it now.
correct, we've owned it for a couple years.
We just got
Starting
run
to
until it
squeeze,
blew up.
and it's starting to go down. My question for you guys is, how long do you want to wait until we bill people for water and sewer? Because if our printer breaks down, we got anything to print.
Take it on flash drive and go to Pitco or whatever.
The issue is that we can, I mean, the printer's
Don't they
working.
got fancy one we just bought or rented or leased at the library?
They have a new one, we just leased it, sure,
That one's.
yeah.
You
it is
just
leased.
swap.
It takes like everything else, it would take a few months for us to get a new printer with the way things are.
He's
So,
talking
and
if we
this one,
just-
there's no, they don't make the parts for this printer anymore, or copier. So if anything breaks, we don't have a copier printer, and that's a big deal. So,
You do what you gotta do.
So we need to look at, I'm against leasing. Because that servant. That was costing us more than if we went out and bought a brand new one.
No, buying brand new ones of those fancy ones is like buying a fire truck. I mean, it's
It's
expensive.
about 10 to 12,000, depending on what we're.
Oh, well, that's not that bad. They were
Just-
talking about way more than that last time.
You just play the gambling game of how long it's gonna last, so. Which,
Yeah, I could go belly up a month and you just
I
don't.
mean, what's the competition like? I did some work for copy systems, I think. up in-
But weren't we paying like
The
a
West Branch.
$2,000 service fee when we were,
Yeah, but that was a year.
huh?
That was like a year though.
and that's including leasing. We still pay a maintenance contract. Even when we buy, we have it.
And well, not only that, and then you had to pay per copy too, or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah,
That's what was already, color copies were different than regular black and white.
it was insane when we were paying.
Koch brothers.
we have Cook Brothers now.
I mean, we got the flexibility to pay
There's
it
other
outright.
people
I
that-
just-
We have what?
We have some flexibility to pay it outright. It's just. I like to have a little bit more wiggle room for emergencies, but
Like I said, it is working now, it's just that
it's.
if it doesn't
You
work,
can tell it's getting due.
yeah,
Well, maybe the office ought to have a little fund set off to the side for their little supplies that they'd like to,
Capital improvements, equipment.
you know, like the fire
Set
and
aside.
police have their vehicles set aside.
We do, it's just a small amount. It's only
So
1,000,
maybe,
2,000.
yeah, stick a little more in there. Couple thousand more every year.
Yeah, you don't wanna buy them because in 3 or 4 years down the line, most of them aren't compatible with the new stuff and all that other crap anyway.
at the University of Iowa, we leased it. Just leased. Yeah. Every 5 to 6 years.
So the other question I had about the CIP for the admin was, didn't we just get a new roof on this thing like 3 or 4 years ago?
You may have, there's just an issue right in this corner. I don't think it's 10,000. That's where I was talking about flexible room where I may have bumped up a number just to make the circle not gigantic. But right on here, right along in here, right next to our ADA spot where it leaks and ice forms right at the ADA spot when people are.
The snow guard.
Yeah.
Would get put across there. Just to keep it.
Oh, just a little bar? Oh, 10,000, I'll do it for 8.
And some of it will be for emergency radio.
I'll help you, Colton. I'll help you.
Good.
Right now, we do not have enough if a tornado were to hit, we do not have, we have some radios for fire. But we need a little bit from city hall, library, parks to communicate with public. works. So it's still not gonna equal 10, but just. That's where my flexibility is and where I'm being transparent. on flexibility.
That's fine.
Yes, it's not gonna be.
That's fine.
Just to be quick on general fund revenue. There's only an increase of about $50,000, which is what I assume. Hotel motel. Which we'll talk a little bit more about next week, but. It's performing better than the last couple years than it has. So. Since 50% of hotel motel is going towards Main Street. They're gonna get an increase in contributions from us. That's kind of what I was saying. Let's see what Main Street does with the split position, because they're essentially gonna get more money from us due to our 50%. Hotel motel goes to Main Street. So, and then ag. Property values took a hit. That's kind of why it was hitting. Fire department, rural budget, so, so we didn't quite get
Ag property taxes values took a hit.
the value
Last
went
year.
down.
Thought they went up.
Not in Johnson County.
No, not Johnson County.
I thought Hunter County was a record high.
Or our rural increase, but we took a hit in Scott County first. Yeah, Scott County, Scott, for one thing. I'm thinking maybe they annex some more property in there too, in the city. We took a big hit.
Scott and Grant.
We lost $3,000 over there.
I don't know, we only got a $500 increase from.
Well, actually, our rural. With all my rural, it's $293. But we took a $3,000 hit in Scott. All the rest of them went up some.
You still on general fund then?
Yes, I've got for Matt stuff. For tree trimming, I did add 5,000 in my, again, the flexible stuff where I'm being transparent. If we get the grant, Neil Corsmo is gonna write it. If we get it, we'll match 5 and 5, so it'll be 10,000 for more trees at the cemetery. I know we're still figuring out what to do on street trees. I figured if they're all in the cemetery, easier to maintain when they're all in one spot. And that would be derecho money, some late derecho money. I think according to Matt, we dropped what, 70 trees or something like that.
Yeah, 70, 75 right now, and we're looking at about 30 to 35 more this minute that will pick up. Most of them are the vertical. They're just getting to the age where they're all gonna start going.
So if we get the grant, good. If we don't, then we just spend 5,000 less. It would just be the normal 20,000 budget. Cemetery, Matt kind of told you about the purchasing the mower. But yeah, that was my note for you guys is, you know, we take a hit on cemetery. So Colton pointed that out. City office, we talked about the building expenses and emergency radio equipment. We did increase training and travel, one. We got a new staff member or a part-timer, they're gonna need some training. Two, we still want to do a little bit more training on our finance and software side, and then three. Last year I did not go to national ICMA, I am asking for it this year. I'll probably do that every other year. For my contract, it's supposed to be every year, but I'm not gonna go to the expensive places if it's not worth its value. We'll see how Austin is. Supposed to be a little bit cheaper place to go to, so. But
Beats Boston. It's gotta be cheaper than Boston.
Yeah,
San Francisco.
Boston, San Francisco, or, yeah. London, you know, I'm not, that's taxpayer shouldn't. be paying for that. New postage machine that's getting split between water and sewer as well. Like all things, postal service is going through a new scanning system. And so our scanner and the equipment we bought isn't gonna work by fiscal year 25. So that's another reason why I like the lease, because every 5 years they come out with new technology, so your computer or whatever you buy is obsolete.
So I have a question about the postage. If you're gonna split it up between water and sewer, does Park and Rec do mailings? Does the library do mailings? Is there a way to maybe split that up even a little bit further?
We do, on the maintenance mailing. I don't know, it's only a $4,000 machine. I don't know, we could, but if we do parks, it's coming out of general fund, whether it's city hall.
And library has their own.
They do.
Oh, they do.
Mhm.
Well, when they had late fees.
Yeah, they do a lot for the late fees.
And not only that, they send books, because they do part of the interfund library. So they send-
I don't think so.
I was trying to think.
Yes, they don't do late fees.
Yeah, that's why I was
Oh,
asking.
they
We
put
don't
out the
make
news.
these anymore. How much close is it?
They put out the.
Books
news
make
flash.
sense though.
Yeah, that's what it is. I asked you.
All right, chief, you are up.
Mine won't be long. I think I'm on page 40, under the expenses, I start on 40. Basically what you'll see in the proposed column is, what a fifth officer would cost, so we always wanted you to see that. With the additional training, uniform, equipment, that kind of stuff. In the requested line, obviously that maintains 4 officers. We made some adjustments for inflation and some of those increases are for inflation. And then what you'll see with our budget is we combined some of those line items last year is kind of a first attempt to simplify some of those line items and just kind of, we're breaking some of those back apart because it's harder to administratively track for Heidi and myself knowing where that money was going. And then we also, for the technology services, that one's got a big bump because that includes the Lexipol contract. And then big ticket items for us, obviously, we're sitting on a car for a year, but you'll see that 35,000 still in that line item gonna get pushed to our set aside. And equipment, we're staying on our schedule. Oh, sorry if you didn't have that in front of me. Or in front of you, I was just looking at it.
Here you can kind of see it's about 100,000 for training and equipment, all that stuff. For the first year.
So basically, we bumped our other things other than our vehicles. Year before last, for budget constraints. So this year. We replaced our service handguns. And then in this next upcoming budget, we're back on that schedule. You'll see the 15,000, which like replace one of our main servers down at the police department. Other than that, I will take your question.
How old are the handguns?
We replace them about every 10 years.
Yeah.
We trade them back, yeah. Our
Don't you
property.
guys have the option to buy them?
We do, but it's more clean to just, so basically that process is, if they wanna buy them. So the 10 years ago, when the officers had the option to buy them just at what the trade value was.
Right.
There's a better way to do it now, so now if an officer wants to buy it, they have to buy it from the company we traded to. So, it's just cleaner, that way all the ATF paperwork gets done and the guns completely come out of the city's name.
Gets away from the city being a
Yeah.
handgun seller.
Yeah, and so this year, I didn't even put it up for auction. It's just a nightmare, because then that responsibility would fall on me to make sure that paperwork got completed. So, nope, they can just have them all. But basically, why we replace them, at about 10 years, you're gonna have to go through that gun completely, change springs, night sights start to get dim, and time you put $100 at night sights and spring kit and all the guns, you've bought half of a gun again, so. A lot easier just to send it down the roads. Here you go, I'm sit down.
Whoa, you're not getting off that easy. So, you have 4 vehicles. But we're trading vehicles every 6 years. Doing the math,
Eight.
that doesn't work.
8.
You have to go to 8 years.
We keep them for 8. It's 8.
Huh?
It's 8 years.
Right.
So would a fifth officer require a fifth vehicle?
No.
My caveat to that is,
Like,
in 10 years, they will be arguing for a fifth vehicle. So we need to make sure that's in writing. Because I can tell you what's gonna happen.
To answer that question on the record, if I'm still here, since I served at your guys' pleasure. The intention is, as we add staff, we transition to a fleet where just nobody would have an assigned vehicle. That they basically check it in and out every shift.
Well, that was one of the things, and not to micromanage or anything, but if we got one car sitting doing nothing right now, should that be the older car that realistically should be traded in this go around?
And that is the one actually that is
Okay.
in that function.
Okay.
We try to also put the oldest vehicle with the newest
With the youngest guy, yeah.
person.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to dropping a vehicle. And then rotating every. Sooner. You can drop it to 6 years or 5 years, but
And originally, Jody, you are correct, when we had 3 vehicles, we did them every 6 because they're being used more often. So when we went to 4, we would push it out to 8 just because we weren't putting the miles on them.
let's see that. To me, that didn't make sense because you should be able to push it out. Longer. If you added a 4th vehicle. Than just 2 years. And I mean. To me, the hours that were on the street compared to. Rotating, I don't even rotate my vehicle this year often. But
But your vehicle isn't running 10 hours a day. Yeah, I mean, that's part of the
well,
issue.
ours isn't either. You can't tell me
Yeah, it
that
is.
we have a vehicle on the street 10 hours every day. Not, no, no. I did not see a vehicle on the street 10 hours, 7 days a week.
I would say some of it is though too, especially in these harder conditions. I had to learn this lesson too in north central Iowa. There's a lot of idle time because of the equipment you have in there. So if you are doing a quick check, that vehicle is on. You're going into the office and you know you gotta go back to patrol 30 minutes later, you're keeping that vehicle on. So I don't know about the 10 hours, but there is a lot.
They
more
might
idle
run
time.
for 10 hours,
There's more idle time.
but they're not on the street rolling for 10 hours.
That idle time is just as bad on them as it is driving.
I know it is.
Say idle time.
I would like to, it would be interesting to would be interesting to look back and for our maintenance costs and see, since we bumped the rotation out there every 8 years, I mean, they were getting rotated a little more often. If that's helped with the maintenance costs on them and if it actually pays for itself.
So since we're in that first that first phase
Yeah.
of 8 years,
You don't have enough data.
just replace the one. That was 8 years old.
Yeah.
And if you historically look back, that's where they were all pretty much replaced. I mean, at 9 years is about the lifespan of a vehicle that's
Right.
been run hard. Because the thing you have to consider is all those components of that vehicle are 8 years old.
Right.
All the suspension pieces, and so you put that vehicle in a situation where the officer is expecting it to perform like a new car.
Yeah.
And they take a high G turn and break a tie rod in, and they flip it at high speed. And then instead of buying a car, you're going to funeral. So there's important things to keep in newer vehicles for police. Yeah, you don't drive your own car at 120 miles an hour. And bob and weave. Car on.
Once, never have done it before. Never got over 85.
But right now, Jody, I hope I can alleviate some of your concern. We've been fairly lucky with our maintenance. The vehicles we have are pretty well performing. We got rid of one of them that was how did you phrase the cemetery? Money pit, yeah, money. Well, that we got rid of that one, so
Where is the Durango?
it's with Officer
What one sitting?
There isn't. All the vehicles are signed. to the boss.
We're at the update council, where's Officer Moore?
Officer Moore is currently at Iowa Law Enforcement Academy in City District. That is. So the Durango had been parked in the town hall garage.
You stay the night there or is that a weekly? You coming back every day?
He does stay Monday through Friday and he comes back Friday
Oh, that's right.
or Sunday, I should say, Sunday night.
Yeah, he started again.
Anything else for Corey? Thank you.
Yes, he's doing. So in my budget this year, you need like $8,300 worth of cuts, 5,000 of that was the wages. Reason the wages were cut some was because of the on-call pay, the on-call thing wasn't taken as much as being used as much as we planned on. There's, I mean, I made a few other odds and cut with other line item stuff, so. You guys have the sheet when I cut and stuff, so.
Yeah.
But the big cut was 5,000 from wages. There was a few increases, not a lot. My revenue from the townships, like I said, is about $300 more than it was last year. So the meeting, all the cut will come from the city, or the city side of it.
It's only $300 more.
The rural,
Yeah.
the rural only came up $300.
That's all.
Last
Because we lost a lot in Scott.
year. We lost $3,000 in Scott Township. And the rest of them all come up to offset.
Well, yeah,
But Scott Township's our biggest township too. We get 84, this year will be $84,000 in Scott Township.
far as our CIP, our set aside is going to pay what we borrowed to pay off the truck that's been ordered. So that truck won't be here until probably April 24 still, so we're still a long way away. And I think we still did a good move by buying it because of the inflation and stuff. I don't know exactly what we're saying, but we'd saved a lot of money by ordering it. The next project is.
What have we paid on that already?
In all.
We paid it all.
In
July.
Paid 813,000. I see. So that's where all of our set aside money is going to pay that back. Don't think they made it yet. But so our next purchase after that would be probably air packs. We really, that's dire need, so I'm trying to find some grants for that. Then if we keep setting this set aside of money, I will still be able to get air packs in like hopefully 25, so. Yeah, find a grant to do that.
So we're not gonna have to buy radios. Are we?
No, but there's still gonna be some costs. I'm not sure how you've been to the meetings, I'm not sure how that's gonna look yet. So hopefully the summer we'll be getting not all new radios, we're getting a few new radios.
Because our current radios are compatible with.
Some of our
The new
Johnson
system.
counties and the Johnson County radios, we can use those for Sierra County also. But we're still gonna have to buy, like our pagers, we're getting all new pagers, so we gotta buy all of our like pager cases, all that kind of stuff, we still have to buy all that ourselves.
That whole radio deal with you guys is just never ending.
Well, hopefully it's gonna be ending when Cedar County gets it all, hopefully this summer.
$8 million system?
Yeah.
Yeah, Cedar County stepped out.
I hope our trouble will be over.
What are, Nick wants
What-
to
Yeah, what
know,
is the impact?
With an air pack,
No, I know it.
how much are they?
Yeah.
Probably close to with a mask and an extra bottle, probably 8,000 to 10,000.
um,
way.
And like I said, every year,
Way under, but I was-
and every year, you know, the inflation every year, technology.
I was
What do you have
I was
in
thinking
that?
6 to 7.
14,
But everybody's got their own face piece and. Life.
They're pricey.
They got a question? All right, thank you.
Price is right. Yeah, what do you think?
I got down into bottle here.
Nick, we are ready for you when you are.
Yeah, thanks again. I'm sorry that I can't be there. I've got 2 kids with hand, foot, and mouth, we think. So they're miserable. And for this short period, I'm hoping you're okay with me doing this by Zoom. There are honestly relatively few changes in our proposed budget from last year. I don't have details on the proposed cut. So I'll just talk without that included. Our non-salary changes. There's only 2 real major changes. One is building maintenance, just to deal with an older building having more maintenance needs. Some of our service agreements also go up regularly, so we just need to increase on that. And then our office equipment, as you've already discussed, we did lose the company that previously provided our copier service. We did do a cost analysis per printing costs, allowed costs, monthly costs, and chose the cheapest version of that over the course of, I believe, 10 to 15 years. I would advise for other departments that are looking at a new copier to lease. It's far cheaper in short term, because like I said, like you guys were talking about, it does even then require a maintenance agreement, even if you purchase it, and that costs quite a bit usually. We also do charge still for printing and copying and faxing, so we pay for about 1/3 of that, just out of that. that's about all we have for changes. I will note that our non-salary expenditures this year, our proposal was 73. This also does not include benefits, 73,905. In fiscal year 19, that was approximately $400 less. So over the course of 5 years, we have already effectively taken a cut of 17%. So, I mean, we've done what we can to keep the city running by making things last and by skimping. I frustrate my staff constantly by trying to do stuff in-house when many places would pay for service. So
Any questions for Nick? I thought I saw something here about a roof repair. When is that scheduled for?
we're looking in the future. It was repaired the year before I arrived, so it's about 15 years ago. So we figure within 5 to 10 years, we're probably going to need to look at it. We need to look at it better when it's just better weather out and kind of assess. But yeah, I mean, that's in the mid-range future. I assume we'll probably use savings for that.
That was one of the things I was pushing this year is we're getting closer to having a master department capital improvement plan for things like this. So that way we know what's up ahead the next couple years. So you did a good job putting together a couple things he thinks will be needed at the library in the next couple years, just your maintenance, building maintenance.
One of the first and foremost is even though we took care of the stairs on the upper stairs, the bottom 2 sets are not as bad, but bad. There's also some gaps in sidewalk around the building, which will cost quite a bit. I think there's one larger section, the large square at the top that's going to need some care. Whether we can grind down a side or not, I don't know, but it's sunk. As with anything at the library, it's sinking.
Does the city do that whole stretch of sidewalk from Little Cemetery all the way to
Yeah.
the bus barn, or the school does of the bus barn, right? No,
On their side of the street. I think they
On
do.
the football field side.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you talking on Downey? Yeah. They'll,
Downey Street.
our guys will still hit it if they're.
we're
driving
talking
by.
Downing Street.
Yeah.
side.
Okay.
Cause they gotta drive past it anyway, so instead of packing it down, if they're the first ones that get there, they'll blade it off, cause they gotta go down to the driveway and turn around anyway. So instead of driving on their snow and packing it down, we scrape it off.
We should be charging them. If they're gonna charge us for gym rental, then we should be charging them to remove smoke. No,
Good
point.
Start the library.
It's not a
I
fight.
mean, if
It's
they,
not a
they
fight
don't
with
wanna
fight.
work for us, then why are we doing stuff for them for free?
That's something Marty and I will be talking when we get through and get a new director. It's charges on the basketball. Have had that discussion that we'll want to rediscuss.
So do we look through?
We're not charging for basketball.
They charge us. He was saying it.
I thought we dumped that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a
sure.
little bit, but there's still you.
I know. Oh,
Well,
you,
and here's where it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense is if we're gonna come to the point, which we haven't got the parks yet. But if we're gonna come to the point where if the program doesn't make money, we're not gonna do it. You know, well,
Who's
If-
gonna rent their
if-
gym?
where are they gonna get basketball players later on in the
Well, the other
play?
thing is, who's gonna rent their gym?
You know, where are they gonna get basketball players if the first time they ever play organized basketballs in the 7th grade? You know, they're already about too far behind the 8 ball to ever make that up. I mean,
You don't think
you
they
get
should?
it though. I
They
mean,
never use
we don't let people just have town hall for nothing. I mean, you know, there's everything has a cost to it. I'm sure we charge them to use this for their meetings, don't they? Don't we?
They don't use this anymore.
They don't use this
They're
anymore?
at the library.
Do we charge them the library?
No,
Oh, no,
the
that's
library.
Oh, okay, so wait a minute, our libraries, everything's free, that's the beautiful part of that.
Coffee up there every morning. Okay, well, where are we at? Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
I have nothing else for Nick.
IT cable access.
You got anything to add on IT cable?
Oh, cable, I think, I don't know for sure. I'm guessing that we'll go the route of removing, manned, recording. In lieu of, purchasing a device that'll do like a 360, video conferencing. So, I mean, there'll be an upfront cost for equipment next year, but, after that, it won't cost as much.
So an owl then in the council room here?
There are other options as well, but yeah, something like that. We haven't decided specifically on a device, but yeah, I mean, it's something like that. Otherwise, we don't really have much change. I mean, that'll drop salaries. Salaries already did drop in cable because we're just allotting for what's actually in there. I did again, an analysis of what we actually pay per year for salaries. The amount of time per council meeting for Becky's salary, even though, like I said, we decided, I think, to go without that. And if you want to know, city council meetings last an hour and a half, almost exactly, over the course of a year. So that's dropping down to by about 3,500, and then more if we go the route of unmanned. If we go unmanned, that'll save about an additional 2,600.
All right. Next. Park and Rec.
You, Roger?
Me?
Yeah. You said we were doing this part.
Let's shovel the sidewalk.
All right, it may not look like I'm cutting as much as I actually am. There's a couple lines that I've highlighted for my flexible money. So I've really cut more than what that total is. To be transparent, we cut from Veronic Park Trail last budget. So I added 20,000 in there for trails and cameras. I don't want to spend any more money at Veronic until we have constant fight every year. And it just seems like it's a never ending. We just pump money in the Veronic and then somebody vandalizes it and then it's.
So spot Randy with bathroom doors this summer.
Correct.
How much, 600 bucks?
It might be more than that.
Can't remember. I picked them up and put them in, installed them. I don't.
So transparent on that. I didn't cut down on any of the youth sport expenses, even though I assume they probably will go down a little bit if we're charging a correct amount. And I did add the optional part-timer, an additional part-timer for Matt. So really, I probably cut 40 to 50,000. You're just not seeing it because of that flexible spending. But there is a surplus of about a negative 150,000. About 130,000 of that is salaries due to park and rec director, mowing, concession stand pays for itself, and then part-time for Jamie Tucker is in there, so it's really the mowing. But the summer programs, at least in this budget, pay for themselves. What we are proposing is a minimum participant cost calculator. I didn't want to bore you with those small details, but basically, Heidi and I worked on a spreadsheet that outlays all the costs, including rental fees at the high school, all that. And if you want the charge to be only $60, then you have to have 10 or 15 participants. If you want to raise it, or let's say you don't meet that number, then the parents have to agree to pay an additional $20 so that program breaks even. There is a caveat of, we do want to make a little bit of overhead, 10, 15, 20%, whatever it is. So that way, if you are a child under the free and reduced program, you would get a discount. You're still gonna have to pay, but hopefully we'll break even between that discount. We'll have to enter an agreement with the school.
No child left behind. Kinda like that, but only for recreation.
So I'm not doing income verification, our director's not, so it really is gonna be contingent upon working.
They're not gonna tell us.
If they don't, then we can't
I don't
offer.
think they can't rebill it.
Other schools, other cities, they can, so.
If we ask if a student is on free and reduced lunch.
If we enter a private agreement between our department and the school, not council, not council, so it's not a public document.
You do it private.
Well, like when I was in scouts, I was running the scouts, we had a deal where if your kid couldn't afford to go to camp, it happened. There were business owners in town, there were churches, a kid wasn't gonna not go to camp because he couldn't afford it. And I'm sure it would be like that for basketball or baseball or something like that. I'm sure there's people in the community that if little Johnny couldn't play because they couldn't afford it, little Johnny'd play.
Probably having that, so. Whatever.
It does
Well,
cut,
you have to be careful now because then you're getting sensitive. Those people, you'll hurt their feelings by putting it out there that they can't. Or to do that for their kids.
Well, there's more than one
So
Johnny.
you gotta be careful.
that's all based on private agreements.
And have to
school
have
working.
policies
Yep,
in
and
place.
policies need to be passed by this board. Park board needs to recommend it. You guys will need to pass it, school board will need to pass it, so still contingent upon.
So-
A discount would be contingent upon your guys. Yep.
Am I missing something? Because there's just something about this doesn't make sense. How do you have a minus $200,000 surplus? Yeah, that-
Deficit, sorry, deficit. however you want to
Okay.
put it. Yep.
The negative surplus.
There you go. Surplus then.
So,
That was how my brain worked, I didn't change the word.
But is it
surplus.
budgeted and funded?
I've been up to Cubby Park. And. The area between the diamond where the pitching or the batting cages are. I don't know how we're gonna get grass to grow there. But we gotta do something. The lighting on the trail, we talked about putting solar lights in. There's nothing on here about solar lighting. Because a lot of people walk that trail. It's amazing how many people are walking them. Even in the snow, they're walking it.
Thought we decided we weren't gonna do light and they could bring a flashlight if they want to walk in the dark.
Headlight, I thought we talked about headlights.
Yeah.
Didn't we talk about that?
The big plan, I will say, is we're gonna work on a master plan hopefully it'll give us more guidance, what's most important, trails, facilities, programs. So hopefully we'll get you guys a little bit more guidance in the next 6 months.
Cause right now, I don't, we've had a grass problem since day one, grass.
Since
has been
day
so
one,
clear,
right?
Day one. And Dirk's doing a good job, but. Hopefully we can. Exactly.
Especially if you let people continue to use it, you know?
Exactly, that's.
I know for a while there.
Not walk on it.
Yeah, it was gone.
Well, that's like,
Stakes and ropes were down and everybody.
that's like the whole dog park deal. You know, once you lost that grass, it ain't coming back, you know? And it actually looks better, way better than it did this time last year, but of course, it's, winter ain't over yet. That's where it really takes its beating.
Parks is playing for a mower. In the past, they haven't. So I did use some of their supposed to be set aside and just transferred it to the purchase of the mower. Couple other things, biggest controversial items obviously will be the cost calculator. Could confuse people if one grade has to pay more than the next. If they don't get enough participants, like, that could be a little bit controversial. And then cuts pool in our camp program. The purpose for my recommendation is, in terms of the pool, that one hurts me the most, but the camp part of the program is Scattergood has a program they just started 2 years ago. So when we started this camp program 15 years ago, there was no other players in the area. So it made sense for us to pick up the piece. Scattergood charges like $40 more. And then if we're taking a loss and we're undercutting another program that's doing it, the issue that we have with the pool is we use camp counselors to take them to the pool and watch them. So if we cut camp effectively, unless we find volunteers, we're also cutting, taking kids to dip into the pool. But my last argument would be, although I don't want to, and it stinks on the equity part, and you'll hear me kind of repeat this as we go along. Library is our equity department. They are able to handle families or individuals that are struggling. That is part of what libraries do. Parks are supposed to be inclusive. We can't necessarily, we don't have the room to have equity. So that's kind of why I picked on Parks and Rec a little bit more than library this year. We do have a right to be inclusive and let everybody participate. Get everybody as equal playing time as we can, but in terms of equity, can't quite do it. And I would say, I guess, on the pool section, at the same time, our voters have to, I guess, accept their decision. When they say no to raising taxes on a rec center, on a pool, I appreciate how hard our staff has worked to try to, mitigate that our voters have said no, but, it's been clear through the past 20 years that people don't want to pay more in taxes. Maybe that's changing because we got Covey Park to pass. Maybe that's changing because we got the school to pass. But I think to a certain extent, staff kind of overcompensates to try and give people an opportunity when in fact it's the voters and the parents that need to deal with the decisions and the votes.
What was the average usage for the swim lessons. And it had been trending up or down.
Camp for sure was trending down. I don't know about the pool. It's probably stayed the same. And I think camp has trended down because of COVID, and it's never fully recovered after, even last year, never fully recovered. So I don't know about the pool, but it's probably not significant one way or another, otherwise I remember. So it's
10 or
probably
15 kids maybe.
Busload.
Maybe Becky knows. If she does, we'll have her chime in. But I'm thinking it's like 30 kids, but
I can't give you specific numbers, but the swim bus was full. And I would probably say the same about the camps. They probably hadn't recovered, but they were pretty busy too when I would go down there, but not as much as in the past.
they are certainly popular programs, but they take a dig at our general. And a couple other things that took a dig at our general fund was, and this again kind of revolves on my evolved position on working with Main Street, is if we did well on a certain program, that extra money, which was a park board policy, not a council policy, that extra money that was made on certain programs would go to like food items that would bring people to events. So we were helping Main Street out even more. For example, we were providing 500 free hot dogs at the Fall Fest. We were, providing a lot of those food items were being provided by the city. Not that that's 100% wrong, but in a tight couple years, I think it's too much. And when you're talking how much we gave in fireworks and all that stuff, the amount of stuff we've given on celebrations has been a lot. And that's kind of my plug in the Main Street. Not only do we have an enter a contract with them, and they do a great job, but we also pay for bands, at the concert. We also have our Parks and Rec that pays for food that builds these events. So partly my ever evolving theme that, we just need to reel it back a little bit on.
I think like for the swim bus, I think you're gonna do this for the baseball and the t-ball and the basketball and all that other stuff. Instead of just cutting it, not offering it, you find out what the expense of it is going to be. You offer it at that a break-even amount, and then you let the people decide whether or not they want it or not. If they want it enough that they're willing to pay for it, great. But just to say, no, you can't do it. We're not gonna do it anymore. You're on your own. We're not gonna do that with some of the other things. So, that's kind of a big deal, a kid learning how to swim, and, how else are they gonna do it? We don't have a pool.
But it's like Adam said. It's the taxpayer's decision not to have them.
I call bull crap, because if they were to put it on the thing and vote for it right now and it passed, we couldn't build them a pool even if we wanted to.
By raising taxes? Yeah. Yeah.
Then we raise the taxes.
I don't know if we would have the debt service capacity. You still can only borrow so much money, guys. Doesn't matter what your tax rate is. That's how you pay it back.
We certainly
we're
can
close
go
to
with
that.
that option,
What?
And we're close to that.
if that's how council feels.
But
I
not
think-
if you do a bond, yeah,
No, it's too much money, no.
That is,
we're not gonna do it, so it doesn't matter. But
Good.
you have Coralville, West Liberty, Tipton, that all have pools. That hopefully kids from outside their residence or their limits, city limits, can join their swim programs or learning.
I mean, I guess I don't understand what the big deal is offering it up a program that's going to be sufficient and take care of itself as far as pay wise. I mean, what the hell's the, why are we fighting about that? If it'll go,
I think we're talking about doubling the price of camp, doubling
it
the.
doesn't matter what the cost is. I mean, at least if you offer it, it's there, take it or leave it.
That would, we would learn then of whether it's gonna be accepted or not.
Right. Yeah, it'd have to be minimum of this many setups. Yeah.
So you'd say it's $100 for a minimum of.
So we have to
20
budget for
kids
that.
gotta sign up, and if we don't hit the minimum, the program doesn't.
We wouldn't have to budget for it because
For
it's
swim
revenue.
lesson, for swim lesson.
You'd have to budget it, but we
Budget.
just would do a break even. If the program happens, it doesn't, we need it on the expense side because otherwise we're amending our budget.
So do you have baseball or, and all that on there?
They make money.
Well, what if they
And
don't?
youth basketball. Well, they have in the past.
How can you make money on baseball? You have to pay for that.
You have to pay for our fields, we already own them.
Cause it doesn't cost to pay the rent. Versus like,
You have to
trans-
maintain.
And no
if
transportation.
you wanna include all of that, but we're never gonna break even. Parks and Rec would never. Parks and Rec would never break even if you included like Melissa's wage or our director's wages and you included everyone's wage. It would never break even, but you can have your programs break even with rental fees and uniforms and balls and
Reynolds.
tournaments or whatever. You could make the programs break even, but you're never gonna have the entire department.
Right, the whole thing is kind of askew and it's because we ask different departments that they have to be able to make money or fund themselves, but not really. The only departments we ask to do that is water, sewer, and stormwater,
And
everything.
fire, pretty much fire. The city only pays like what, 8,000?
135.
What's the city throw in now?
They're almost $100,000.
That, they're a cheap date. That, the fire department's a cheap date, really, when it's all said and done.
You're right. Because
It's not a competition.
Well, I say wrong. It is competition because the water department and sewer department make money. So those departments are the winners. They make money. Everything else is just managing the debt. Is all we're doing is managing the debt.
They may be making money, correct, but we have, we're saving a lot of that money too for projects. Head.
you just raise my sewer rates 3 times.
Sewer.
Parks and
Right.
Rec
Spend it.
will always be a public good. What I
Right.
mean by that is, yeah, it's never going
It's
to.
never gonna make money. Law enforcement is never going to make money. Fire department is never going to make money. Apparently the cemetery might make money, but we never gonna be able to get it.
That is the drawback. I can certainly add it and see how it goes.
Yeah.
Minimum cost to run the thing is $2,000. Spitball, I'm not saying anything is, but to make it serviceable, if it's $50, then you need 40 kids.
Right.
Or let them know, I mean, or it's $100, or it's $100, you need 20 kids. If you don't hit that minimum, they get their money back. And you say, sorry.
Maybe I'm being pessimistic, but if we have a $7,000 or so loss in pool and camp, and we only have 50 kids, then you're talking a $700.
Oh, I know.
Well, camp, there's an alternative. Scattergood's an alternative. Well, we may not feel so bad. I don't feel so bad about that, but swimming lessons. Like you said, it's a little different animal.
Well, I just seem to think we do these get-togethers and we want everybody to, which is why, I mean, I know it sounds terrible, but all these things you guys do where you want people's public opinion, and all they say they want is rec stuff, and we're just gonna gut the program, well, then why do we call them together and see what they wanted? If we weren't gonna be at least halfway willing to try to give them what they want, then don't ask them what they
Why is
want.
it our responsibility to give them what they want?
We shouldn't have asked, Tom.
I think 2 to 4 years ago, we didn't know we would be in this we would be in this shape.
They've been trying to build a pool since I was 10.
It's not just,
25 years,
it's not about
everybody
building a
wanted to
pool.
build something
It's not about
25
building a
years,
pool.
nobody wants it.
They want
That's
trails,
okay.
they want this.
You know what? City for it. They ain't gonna give me.
I'm just telling you to
Easy
put
to
a,
ask me if they get the free service.
nobody expected that to be
Yeah.
free, that swimming pool
Yes,
thing,
they
they
did.
paid money for it, they paid money for that.
Well,
They want a rec center so they can build. Not have to pay.
That's not what we're talking
It's
about
pretty
right now.
simple. I mean, if people really wanted a dang rec center. you could
You
drive
see
10
an
minutes
opening,
to
let's
town.
go ahead.
I just want to clarify on the swimming lessons. The swimming lessons still happen, but those fees go directly to Tipton. All the city provides is the bus ride to
And the chaperones.
and the chaperone. So I mean, if we can figure out a way to cover, make sure that those expenses are being covered, then yes, I would think that you want to continue, but it's not. We're not telling kids they can't have swimming lessons. We're just saying we
Not gonna
can't
get a ride.
drive you there.
Correct.
Correct.
Here's an idea. How about we approach the school?
That's
with,
what I'm just telling you, nobody
Hey,
wants.
hey, it's your bus. How about you tell the kids, you can't use my bus?
I have an
Go to
idea.
swim
How about
lessons.
if you're a parent, you want your kids to have swimming lessons, you figure out how to get them swimming lessons.
Oh, shit, my mom did.
that's
Oh,
where
we had a pool.
the important equity part.
We had a
is
pool
Not
back then.
everybody has parents around.
I mean, it's just gonna.
Not everybody has a parent that can drive them.
Town has wanted fireworks for the last 5 years. Go back and take a peek at those donations about fireworks for the last 5 years since I've been on here.
Yep.
That's different, we don't make.
It's not different. If they want.
It is
something-
different because we don't make big deals and hire people to draw shit and stuff for different things, and then we have no intentions of doing it. We don't say, come in and design your firework display, oh,
We just
we
ask
don't
them if they
do
want to
that.
pay 30 grand. Pay an artist $800 every year to paint something, and it's still cheaper than paying 30 grand for fireworks that nobody does.
I just think it's stupid that we're not willing to try this. I mean, we're gonna give hundreds of thousands of dollars away to a developer to build a building that's driving around in a Mercedes, but we can't send kids to damn swimming lessons.
I think we need to work with the school. But
I think that'd be a good project for the new rec director.
How much could we put? Could we put 3,000 or 4,000?
It's kind of hard to do without it.
Why do we have to put money in the budget? It ought to be
We gotta have
money
this
in, money
spend.
out.
We still have to have
We'd
a
have to put
budget.
it in. You have to put it in.
Put it in as a wash.
Yes.
I have to budget both the revenue and expense.
But if they come both as zeros, we don't do it. then nothing.
And it's not just the cost of like, the rental and it's more of Melissa struggled a lot with even finding people to drive the kids,
Chaperones.
right? So that's where our summer counselors came in because they're already paid. That was part of their job duties. If we don't have those, now it's finding people that would take the kids over to Tipton, North Liberty, wherever.
That have background checks.
Right, exactly, and that they would do it.
So a parent, could even a parent volunteer to be a chaperone? And if we contract the bus, we have to do a background check on that parent.
Yes.
We would. So it's not just the money, it's also the logistics of it too.
There's just a lot to it. It doesn't seem like there is.
So. I must be missing something there.
You can at least put it in the
Because
budget, I think.
all we
I mean,
do
to be
is
fair, we can at least
contract.
put it in the budget and make it work. We can make it work. point not offering it? I mean, because of the point where it's $100 a person to ride on a bus to go over there and you need 10 people, and we don't get 10 people, you don't do it. But at least we offered it.
But at least you offered it.
I agree with that.
That's all I'm
Is it
saying.
gonna happen? Who knows? But
Right.
at least it's an offer on the table. And then at the end of the day, it doesn't cost us anything.
30 students on the bus.
Look at the actual numbers, but I do the registrations, I get all the money in, and I do know it's currently like, I'm just making this up, I don't know the exact number, like $20 per kid, and if it's family, it's $30. So if it's 4 kids, so maybe it needs to be back to a
Per kid.
per kid,
Per
instead
head.
of giving that family discount, because I'm not sure why why they came up with that, but that would be another way to make it a little bit maybe.
Is there a number? Is there like a ratio for chaperones? Is it like a 1 to 8 or?
That part I'm not sure of, I just like, I only see the cash.
Yeah, if they're in a city and right.
There has
Probably
to be.
determined by the pool. We'd have to talk with Tipton, because I don't know.
There at least need to be
Yeah.
2, one for the boys and one for the girls that
They getting in the pool with them too? The chaperone?
I don't think so, but
Right.
Should they sit out there?
they probably have lifeguards, but that would be the one.
So if we figure $40 per kid times
We don't
40
know.
kids,
They got the numbers.
And I
Yeah, we
think
don't
it's
need to
like
do that.
$1,600.
Maybe it's like once a week, 'cause Melissa would have to leave for meetings to go up to the library, because that's where the kids would get on. So it's probably once a week for a month, maybe.
Seems like a couple $1,000 to the budget.
Doug, you feel free to jump in if you got something in.
Well, this is what I don't understand. Why are we having to lease or rent?
What,
or
what
pay the
questions do you
school?
have? Cause I'll say.
How many
whatever.
kids and how much did it cost?
Or how
Um,
often?
Say
She
that
said
again.
the bus was full. That was her number.
How often? They did 2 weeks. They would have, 5 days and the bus would come in the morning and they would be gone for 2 or 3 hours and then they would come back.
So it's 5 days.
Couple,
for 2
couple weeks. Is that your question?
Every day for 2 weeks.
How much was it? Any idea?
Haven't had kids in that in a long time.
So we had to pay for the bus.
We paid for the bus, we paid for the staff.
We paid for the driver for the bus.
That was part of the. school, yes,
Was
yes.
that, okay. the
Yeah, they were the
school-
school drivers.
Yeah, that's
Usually,
what I
usually
wanted to know.
Bambi.
So here's the thing, is the school not about kids? Is that not their purpose, to teach kids? Is it not their purpose, is swim lessons not teaching them a life-saving skill? So why is the school not, they have a bus barn guy. Why can he not drive that bus to whatever facility as part of their teaching of these students?
I think they have to pay the wages regardless, but the rental fee for the vehicle is something.
Pay taxes, we pay his wage.
It's no different than the school coming to us and saying, well, now we want a full-time SRO. We're gonna say, you're gonna have to pay us for a full-time. SRO, because we don't have that money.
Okay.
I mean, I guess
Can we
we've-
dwell on this.
We've never asked them, so I mean, you don't know if they might be willing to cut the fee or
I'll ask them, I have no problem going.
you
to
just,
school.
just be nicer about it.
I don't know,
Sounds like a good task.
it probably wouldn't be a
New
good
parks
thing
and
if I
rec.
went.
Let me, Roger, and the
Yeah.
director talk.
Yeah, you and I can
Marty
bring it up with Marty.
Jake.
Roger's a little soft, so maybe you can hear his backbone.
Let's move on. Treaded water for long enough.
Come on, there isn't a
Charge it
championship game.
Who's winning? We didn't care about it enough that bad.
Like the water.
Didn't bet $1,000 on it or nothing?
No.
Oh, 38-7 Georgia.
What? Not close? Is that what I heard?
And it's only the end of the second quarter.
Okay, where are we at, Adam?
We are at miscellaneous. Which would probably be under economic development or community and cultural, if you're looking at the small line items. Hoover Hometown Days is a 30,000 cut. 25 of which is fireworks. I think 2 of it is inflatables. And 3 is just a combination of miscellaneous and advertisement. There is still in economic development or community and cultural. I think we put 2,000 away in savings. So at some point we'll replace all the Christmas lights around town. That's still in there. Community economic development, there is no SEDCO in this budget. I did put a small increase on ICAD. I can only assume ICAD was giving us a good rate because we haven't been a member. We've always budgeted, but we've never paid them. So we just did, but the last 10 years or 5 years, we weren't paying. Remember? When we were talking with them, they were like, you told them we've been a member for the last 10 years. And they said, no, you haven't been paying. Iowa City area development. They're only 2,500 is what they charged us last year, but I increased it by a little bit, assuming that that will increase.
Well, then I'm happy with their performance.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It'd be nice. Come on. No, they're gonna be, they are our best partner. They're the ones that generally, when I get a warm. Yeah. When I get a warm lead on industrial and commercial stuff, it comes from ICAD.
We will. Absolutely. I don't see anything here for our Iowa Cedar River water. $500, I think is what we're paying. The
Keep Iowa beautiful.
watershed. No, it's watershed.
I'll make sure we've got it.
It should come out of stormwater.
Yeah, that should come out of stormwater.
What is it, Roger?
Lower Cedar River Watershed Management Authority,
Maybe that's why no one knows what it is.
WMA. Watershed Management Authority.
And what do they do for $500? If we don't even know who they are.
Probably don't.
Yeah, I've been going to the meetings. I hope someday it will get us in line to want to do another project, like the downstream widening, only upstream. You stay in the loop, you're better positioned for a grant. Kind of like the storm gauge. We decided to do that.
So we need to lump all that together, so we've got that $6,500 that we paid for this gauge thing. And, yes,
Which is coming out of stormwater.
Mhm.
then you got this, so that all needs to be under one category instead of. Maybe it is, I don't know.
It's under stormwater.
All under storm, yeah.
It's just an expense that comes out of our stormwater account. At least that's what it should be.
Except for ICAD, but yeah,
Um,
that's general economic development.
Okay, what's next?
Mayor, city council. Kept things status quo. Legal professional status quo. Commissions the same. Pretty much everything is pretty much the same on those 5. outside of wage increase or utilities, which those ones don't pay.
Coming out ahead on the building inspections, 'cause we're back on this full-blown schedule, right, for. We should be coming out ahead pretty soon.
We're ahead maybe 10 or
The building
20,
permit fees versus inspection.
which goes into the general fund into our reserve. So we can hopefully meet that reserve requirement over time. Possible if we have a good year, it's gonna be bigger. I just budgeted a conservative amount. The growth we had 3 years ago is what I'm budgeting based on it.
I mean, I think it's a set amount, right?
A set amount.
Okay. I was just making sure that the thing that don't need council to go up with the inflation.
I will not repeat your strategic planning items again. Kind of hit this pretty hard, but we will need to talk projects, health benefits, hotel, motel, TIF, all that kind of stuff next week. Any last questions?
So we have a regular council meeting next Monday.
Start at 5:30 on Tuesday.
Tuesday is Martin Luther King
Monday.
Day. And the Cowboys play Monday night, so. We're moving the council meeting to Tuesday.
Is that a playoff game?
Yeah,
All right.
I know, we're gonna lose to the Bucks.
They better than that.
They are, if they play like they play here. Lindsay over TCU would whoop them. Do what? Bucks lost to Atlanta, yeah. Yeah, but they didn't play nobody. So move.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.